Hi, everybody, and welcome to Sneakered Life. I am Piper Harris. So today is kind of a less than 10 talk, but it's Wednesday, and I'm behind because I had such an exciting day. As you all know, I have launched my workbook series. You can see it over this shoulder over here. My Define and Discover programs are now available on Amazon, and this is the exact programming that I use with my coaching clients. Over the years, I've been building curriculum from my experience as a mental health counselor, a fitness and nutrition coach, and it all kind of came together. And so Monday was a really exciting day because I was able to launch my workbooks. I would love for you to support me in that. It's an opportunity for you to work on this at home at your own pace if you're not able to do one-on-one coaching with me today. So today, we're bringing together less than 10 talks, but we are making it a little bit longer than less than 10 talks. So let's get to it. So grief, let's talk about grief. Kind of seems like an odd subject to be talking about today, doesn't it? So I want to talk about grief. When I went to school, we studied Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She's a psychiatrist, and she wrote about this in her book on death and dying. Something that we worked with going through school in psychology, understanding the stages of grief that so many of us go through. Now, when she wrote this book, it was about a terminal illness. But what's really fascinating about her 5 stages of grief is that it really is applicable to all areas of grief or loss that we might run into in our lives. So the first stage of grief is denial. It's, a rebellion against this didn't happen, whether it's illness or a loss of a position. Rebellion really comes into play with denial. The second stage is anger. You're just ticked off. You've been taken out of your comfort zone and you're really fighting against it. You're going to see some anger, possibly some outbursts, that sort of thing. The third stage is bargaining. So this is just when you're like, no, if I do this, maybe this will happen. Something's got to change, please. It doesn't really necessarily have to make sense or be a logical bargaining, but that's what we do. We cycle through. What can I do? If I do this, then this can happen. The next stage is depression. And a lot of us are very well aware when we go through grief, depression. Everybody hits this. It's that lull, that lack of activity. It's just, it's the lowest part of going through these stages of grief. And the last stage is acceptance, accepting what took place and moving forward in a positive manner. So as I was thinking about this, talking about this today, I was thinking about what are some of my situations in life that I would love to share with you. So I'm going to share the story of Master Chef. So if any of you know this story, feel free to, go fold your laundry, but I want to share this story with you today. So for many years, I was a mental health counselor. Then I parlayed into nonprofit management. During that time, I met my amazing husband, and he moved me all over the United States. And during that time, I had my 2 sweet boys. I have always been a high achiever and just loved having my hands in a lot of different things. And so being a stay-at-home mom with 2 boys under the age of 3 was very difficult for me. I wanted something. I wanted something else. It was just a very hard stage of life for me. So we moved from Texas when my boys were both under the age of 3. They're 19 months apart. And we came here to Georgia, and I still just had this feeling of I have to do more. I just need something. And that's really when I fell into my own health journey and started learning just how to take care of myself. Now, you have to understand, I am an Italian girl, and I was diagnosed with celiac disease. That stinks. We make our own ravioli as a family, and I'm being told you can't eat this anymore. So my life drastically changed. And it's funny, there's a short amount of those stages of grief, but that's not the story I'm getting to. So during this time, I am a self-made cook and turned into a private chef and working with individuals with nutritional needs. So during this time, I just thought, for me to make it big, I have to be on TV. This is what I had in my mind. For me to have worth, I have to be on TV. So I applied for a million different TV shows. I tried for Food Network Star, Guys Grocery Games, and then came MasterChef. I got denied by the other two, and I thought, I'm going to keep going for MasterChef. And it was just an amazing process. I'm so grateful for the process. It was so much fun. I had to make this beautiful platter of food, and we just it was like a cattle run. You know, we just had a plate of food, and there was all these judges, and my plate was just so gorgeous. I did a pistachio and herb crusted lamb chop with a gastrique, and it was just so beautiful. And I looked at my plate, and I thought, dang it, I got this. I'm going to have my worth, and I'm going to be on MasterChef. And wouldn't you know, they kept putting me through all these stages, and I made it to the very end. And I remember when I went back, all these different stages, then I had to go back and talk to a psychologist. And they take your blood. And I mean, it's just crazy. And then they have to devise a storyline, because there's always a storyline. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting in a room waiting to talk to the psychologist, and I can see the storyline in the room. I can see who she is, who he is, who she is, who he is. I know how they fit in the storyline, and I'm thinking, how do I fit? So I had an interesting conversation with the psychologist, who essentially told me, I don't think this is a good fit for you. But I ignored it. I thought, no, I am going to have worth. If I am on MasterChef, I'm going to prove my worth. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm very successful in my private chefing business, but I'm going to show the world that a home cook, someone that taught herself and didn't go to culinary school, can make it big. So I got the call. Piper, you're going. You're going, you're going to start filming, get ready. And I have never been so excited in my life. But keep in mind, my kids, I had 2 kids under the age of 3. So it was about this, you know, managing our schedules and asking my parents for help and managing my husband's schedule. And it was just insane. So it started, you know, getting closer and closer to the time that I'm like supposed to fly out. I have to start filming, but I'm not hearing anything. What's going on? So finally kept bugging one of the producer's assistants. Didn't hear anything. Called a friend of mine that did a lot of the interviewing to get me going with this. Still don't hear anything. Then this guy calls me, and I'm like, I just don't understand. I have everything scheduled. Where are my tickets? I just need to know, like, final stages. And he says, you know, the producers decided to go a different way. And I sat there on the phone. I thought, oh, okay. And I said, what do you mean? And he's like, they just went a different way. And I kept pushing him, because I'm like, I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. And he says, listen, you're just too vanilla. It was some of the most painful words I have heard in my life. And in that moment, I had great loss. I had such grief. And it's really interesting. In that moment, I had denial. Like, out of body experience. Is this happening to me? No, this didn't happen. And then just madder than hell. Did you just tell me I'm boring? I worked so hard. Did you see that plate of food? You know, I was so angry. And then I thought, well, no, just a second. I can be a better storyline. I'm bargaining. I can do this. I can be a better storyline. And then ultimately the depression hit. And I sat in this depression for a very long time. In fact, I retired from chefing. I finished out my contracts with my private clients, and I hung up my apron. Sold all of my chefing knives, did all of those things, because I was in such a deep loss, such a deep depression, that someone told me, you're not enough. This lasted for a long time. And then eventually I got to acceptance. And that acceptance was, okay, time to get up. What did you learn? How are you going to move forward? So I did nutritional coaching and fitness coaching, and ultimately life coaching now. It was a very painful time. It was a time of great loss. I grieved what I thought was going to give me worth. I went through every single stage of grief. In fact, I think I kind of cycled through, I was angry a lot. I cycled through anger, denial. I bargained a lot because before I hung up my chef coat, I thought, well, I can go over here. I can go over here. I was trying to bargain my way back into it, trying to get a hold of people and say, why? Wait, I can change my story. I can fit that storyline. It took me years to get to acceptance. So the reason I'm talking to you about this is all of us cycle through grief, whether it's through losing a loved one, losing a dream like I lost, losing a job. We all cycle through these 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And we're going to go back and forth in between them because everybody goes through it in a different way. So let me ask you, what are you grieving right now? If you're in a sweet spot, I'm so happy for you. You're living in the sweet spot. But I know none of us have ever not been touched by grief. So what are you grieving? What stage are you in right now? Understanding that you can kind of cycle through them. You know what's to be expected if you understand what happens in these 5 stages of grief. You can move through them. So I want to give you some steps today. I want to give you some steps today to help you, to focus you. Because here's the thing. When I was told, you're boring, you're vanilla, I stuck in these stages and I just didn't get to acceptance fast enough. I was really angry for a long time. In fact, when I got that initial phone call, I said to my husband, give me a bottle of wine and let's go get a tattoo. I mean, just ridiculous, isn't it? But all of us go through our stages of grief in different ways. And I just wish that I had had some tools or somebody that also had those tools to help me cycle through. And it's funny going to school for psychology. I know these tools, but when you're in the midst of your grief and your pain, man, it is so hard. So if you're in the midst of your grief right now and you recognize what cycle, what part you're in, I see you and I understand. So write this down and share this with someone because there is a way out of your grief. There is. So this is based on the John Kotter strategy, these steps. So think about these. Apply it to where you are right now in your stage of grief. Have you lost a job? Have you been in a career for 20 years and it's just not what it used to be and you have to move on? That's tough. Have you lost a aging parent that you've been taking care of for years on end? You're grieving. You have depths of grief. Are you going to school and you are running a household and you have kids that are in elementary and you just think, I can't do this? You're grieving the possible loss. Can I reach this dream and goal? Have you been told you're not good enough? So think about that. So here are some steps that you can take. Share this with someone, a friend, a spouse, a partner, whoever it is, and they can help you strategize and take control of those stages of grief to at least help you feel some sort of semblance of control. We all need to cycle through this. It's necessary. It's a necessary part of our process and part of our personal growth, even professional growth. But if you have some steps and some strategies, it'll give you just a little bit of control when life feels like it's out of control. So number 1, create a vision or an urgency toward change. Create a vision or an urgency in reaching that change, toward that change. So looking back at my Master Chef denial, I should have just Piper, okay, this was your vision. But it's time to go. What's the next vision? You can do this. Create an urgency. What's that urgency? I could have brought my husband on. Help me, help build this urgency that I can keep going. So create a vision of where you want to go and an urgency toward that change. Even the urgency of get off the couch. create an urgency. Number 2, I want you to build a team who are going to help you in reaching that vision. So your spouse, your partner, a coworker, a best friend, a family member, whoever it is, a therapist, a coach. Have someone. You need a team when you're going through grief, whatever you're in the midst of losing. You need a team. You can't do this alone. I recognized when I was going through MasterChef, I kept it all in. I've got 2 little babies and a husband that works full time. I can't place this on their shoulders. And it created such a depth of depression. I was so deep in my loss and so deep in that stage of depression. Finally, I was like, I got to get a therapist. This is pulling away all my self-worth. Why am I letting MasterChef do that? But it took me 2 years to get there. Number 3, I want you to form a strategy and a plan. I went so willy-nilly in those 2 years. It was a shotgun effect. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go work at the restaurant. I'm going to go volunteer my time. I'm going to try blogging again. I'm going to try another cookbook. It was exhausting because there was no strategy. There was no plan. It was desperation, me clawing my way, and it didn't work. Number four, I want you to enlist. What I mean by that is I want you to communicate the change that you have, that you want to achieve, and move forward with that strategy that you have come up with, that vision for change. You've got to communicate this. So you say to your team, you say to your spouse, your partner, your coworker, whoever it may be, your therapist, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the change I want to make. You have to voice that out. You definitely need to voice that out. Number 5, enable that. Empower others with you in this change. Say to them, I need your help by doing this. But you need to be very specific in those steps. Because something that I did recognize is that when I needed something from my husband, he was doing his best, but he didn't know exactly what I needed. And so when his words of encouragement were said, I just got mad. But it's on me. I didn't give him the specifics. I need this. I need this. I need this. Because again, I was doing this just all over the place. I wasn't strategizing. I was just so caught in my grief. Number 6, I want you to continue conversations based on short-term goals. Here's what I mean. You're not going to get to Z if you don't go through A and the rest of the alphabet, right? You're not going to get there. And so you have to have those short-term goals. I do this with my coaching clients. They come to me and they say, Piper, I want to be this top executive. I want this now. That's great. Now let's break it down. Do you have the necessary skills? Do you have the necessary experience? Do you even have a LinkedIn profile? Do you have an up-to-date resume? You know, it's breaking down into short-term goals. And here is the key. Here's the key. And this is so sweet because my husband shared this with me yesterday. Because if I'm honest, I had a tough day yesterday. And he was telling me about a podcast that he listened to. Goggins was talking about, and I can't remember his last name or first name. I can remember his last name. And he's saying this gentleman was sharing that his cookie jar story. And that when you are in the midst of trial, you think about your cookie jar. You love those cookies, right? And this guy said, my mom had this cookie jar, and you just never knew what kind of cookies were in there. It could be chocolate chip. It could be peanut butter. It could be all these different things. It could be a giant oatmeal cookie, or it could just be a little small, sugar powder cookie. But no matter what, there was a cookie in there. There was something that he could grab and hold on to, and he still had joy, no matter the size of the cookie. So what I mean by sharing that story is celebrate your wins, no matter how big or how small. You have your short-term goals. Make small goals. If your goal is just get out of the bed, that's a huge win. It might seem like a small step, but it's still a win. It's still a small, delicious cookie. So continue conversations with those people. Continue those conversations with yourself. Celebrate those short-term goals. Create those short-term goals and celebrate along the way. Number 7, I want you to sustain this. Build on the momentum. Remembering everything that you're leading up to. If you need to jot this down, keep a journal, see your wins every single day. Because when we're in the midst of grief, when we're in the midst of cycling through these stages, boy, is it hard, right? It's hard to see that we're continuing to build momentum. So you need to do that and continue to sustain that momentum to that change, to that vision that you had created. And number 8, always reassess on new and better ways that you can achieve this goal in creating that positive change. During my time cycling through my stages of grief with MasterChef, it's really interesting because I finally hit the acceptance. I really did. I finally hit the acceptance. We had just moved into the home that we're in now. And I was like, okay, I'm reinventing myself. I've got this. I've got a brain in my head and 2 feet, and I'm going to do this. And I built my women's own fitness studio. So I could put together my nutrition, my psychology, and my love of fitness all in one and feed into women's lives. And it was a huge success. I didn't expect it. But it was really interesting because I won't ever forget, I had gone out front, I think, to let the dog go out to the bathroom or something. And it was just about nighttime. So the sky wasn't dark, but it was dusk. Summertime, it was warm, and my phone rang. And it was a phone number from LA. And I thought, well, that's a weird phone number. So I answered it, and they said, hey, Piper, this is so-and-so from Guy's Grocery Games. We'd love for you to be on the show. So the old Piper that was still stuck in her stages of grief, of denial and anger and bargaining and depression, that girl probably would have jumped all over it because I hadn't figured out that strategy. I hadn't had acceptance. I hadn't done those things yet. But the great thing about that phone call is I had reached acceptance. I had created a vision and a plan to move forward. And I said, well, it's great to hear from you, but I decline. Sure, it could have been so much fun. But I had gotten to acceptance, accepting I'm not boring. I'm not boring. I don't care what they say. And I'm going to move forward. This is my vision. This is my strategy. I have my team. I have everything in place. I no longer need this. I no longer need this. So I know you'll get there as well. It took me about 2 years. It took me about 2 years to cycle through my stages of grief. And we all do. And this can be applied to you in your office, professionally. We all go through this. How many times have you been looked past for somebody else for a promotion and they're absolutely unqualified? Unqualified. You're in complete denial, like, maybe they just accidentally told them that. Then you're just angry, aren't you? You're so angry. Why did they do this? And then you're bargaining. Maybe you're trying to give your manager feedback. Well, trying to show your expertise. And then that depression hits. And you're just not productive. You don't want to work for them. You don't want to do anything. You don't want to move through. But eventually you'll get to acceptance. But you have to want the acceptance more than you want to sit in it. More than you want to sit in it. And so you can use these steps to help you professionally, personally. So create a vision with urgency towards change. Build a team who's going to help you in reaching your vision. Form a strategy and a plan. You have to have a strategy and a plan. Enlist. So you have to communicate the change that you need to move forward with that strategy. You have to enable and empower others specifically in reaching your strategy and your plan and your goal. You have to continue conversations based on short-term goals and celebrate along the way. You have to sustain this. Build on the momentum. Remember what you're doing, whatever you can. Reward people that are helping you in this process and achieving this strategy and this plan. Gotta keep that momentum going. And number 8, always be willing to reassess, to pivot, to look for new and better changes to help you continue on in that positive change. So something to think about today. We've all been through grief. We've all been through grief. And it's not, looking at the 5 stages of grief by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, it's not just about terminal illness. We've all been through deep loss, but we can get through it. So I hope today, by sharing these 8 steps, that you're able to say, okay, I've got this, I'm going to build my team, I've got my strategy, and it's going to give you just a little hope, a little control, a little hope that you can make a difference, accept, and move on. Gosh, can't even tell you how many years out from MasterChef debacle. It's got to be 6 years now, maybe 5 years now. And I am happier than I've ever been. And I am so thankful that I went through that massive grief, because pain forces us to grow, or it forces us to hide. I chose to lean into the pain and the grief, and I have grown, and I have such confidence that no longer do I need MasterChef or anyone else to tell me my worth. And I want that for you too. So think about that today. I'm Piper Harris with Sneakered Life Coaching. I want nothing more than to help you to create a life that drives, excites, empowers, and motivates you. It takes hard work, but you will eventually be walking in your own confidence. I know you can. These are the tips and tools that I work with my clients through. Whether they come to me, they're stuck personally or they're stuck professionally. We use all these kind of things to help you cycle through. So if you have interest in working with me one-on-one, please head over to piperharris.net, get to know me a little bit, or just shoot me a message, and I would love to offer you a 20-minute free video consultation. Or head on over to Amazon and purchase your Discover and Define workbooks, now launched on Amazon. Thanks everybody for joining me today. This is Piper Harris with Sneakered Life, Less Than 10 Talks. I will be talking to all of you very soon.